The small coastal town of Blackwater lay shrouded in perpetual fog, the kind that seemed to seep into every crevice and obscure the truth of the world. Its narrow cobblestone streets wound through rows of weathered buildings, their facades bearing the marks of countless storms. The townsfolk rarely ventured out after sunset, murmuring tales of strange occurrences that had plagued Blackwater for generations. At the heart of the town stood an abandoned mansion known as Wraithmoor Manor. It loomed over Blackwater like a sentinel, its Gothic spires piercing the misty sky. The mansion had been empty for decades, yet lights were often seen flickering in its windows, and the faint strains of music could sometimes be heard emanating from its hollow halls. No one dared approach it, not even on a dare. Among the town's few brave souls was Evelyn Marsh, a young historian drawn to Blackwater by its enigmatic history. She had spent weeks poring over dusty archives and faded journals, piecing together the fragmented story of the manor's last residents. The Wraithmoor family had vanished one stormy night over a century ago, leaving behind only whispers of betrayal and tragedy. Evelyn's curiosity turned to obsession, and one overcast morning, she resolved to uncover the truth. Armed with a lantern and her notebook, she made her way to the mansion. The iron gates creaked open as if welcoming her, their rusted hinges groaning in protest. The overgrown garden was a tangle of thorny vines and wilted flowers, exuding an air of melancholy. The front door of Wraithmoor Manor was ajar, as though anticipating her arrival. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of decay and old wood. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs draped the chandeliers like ghostly shrouds. Evelyn's footsteps echoed as she ventured deeper, her lantern casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance and shift on the walls. She found herself drawn to a grand staircase spiraling upwards into darkness. As she ascended, she felt an inexplicable pull, as if unseen hands were guiding her. At the top of the stairs, a portrait gallery lined the corridor. The faces of the Wraithmoor family stared down at her, their painted eyes filled with an unsettling mix of sorrow and accusation. One portrait in particular caught Evelyn's attention. It depicted a young woman with striking features and a pendant around her neck that glimmered even in the dim light. Beneath the painting was a plaque, Isabella Wraithmoor, 1873. Evelyn reached out to touch the frame, but the moment her fingers brushed the canvas, a cold gust of wind surged through the corridor, extinguishing her lantern. Plunged into darkness, Evelyn's heart raced as she fumbled to relight the lantern. When the flame flickered to life, she found herself standing in a room she had not entered. It was a grand ballroom, its marble floor cracked and its once opulent decor faded with time. A massive chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, its crystals catching the faint light and scattering it like fragments of forgotten dreams. In the center of the ballroom stood a piano, its lacquered surface dulled by dust. A single sheet of music lay open on the stand, the notes forming an unfamiliar melody. Evelyn approached cautiously, her footsteps muffled by the thick layer of grime. As she neared, the keys of the piano pressed down on their own, producing a haunting tune that echoed through the room. The melody stirred something deep within Evelyn's sense of recognition. She couldn't explain. Her mind raced with questions, but before she could act, a sudden vibration shook the floor beneath her. The chandelier swayed ominously, and the walls seemed to close in. She bolted from the ballroom, her lantern's light casting frantic beams as she navigated the labyrinthine halls. Evelyn found herself in a library, its shelves lined with books that appeared untouched for decades. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and ink. On a desk in the center of the room lay a journal bound in cracked leather. She opened it cautiously, revealing pages filled with elegant handwriting. The entries told of Isabella Wraithmoor's descent into despair after the death of her family, hinting at a ritual she had performed to bring them back. The final entry chilled Evelyn to the core. "They are with me now, but not as I had hoped. The price was too great. I must seal the truth within these walls, lest it consume all who dare seek it." The words seemed to vibrate with a sinister energy, and as Evelyn read them, she felt a presence behind her. Spinning around, she saw a figure shrouded in shadows. It radiated an aura of sorrow and anger, its form shifting like smoke. Evelyn's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet refused to move. The figure raised an arm, pointing toward the journal, and a voice echoed in her mind, The truth must be known. The room began to dissolve, and Evelyn found herself once again in the portrait gallery. The faces of the Wraithmoor family now bore expressions of anguish, their painted eyes following her every move. She clutched the journal tightly and fled down the staircase, the walls of the mansion seeming to pulse with a life of their own. When she burst through the front door into the foggy morning, the mansion behind her was silent and still, as if it had never stirred. Evelyn's hands trembled as she gazed at the journal. She had uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The whispers of the Wraithmoor family echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder that some secrets are best left buried. Evelyn returned to her modest room in the Blackwater Inn, the journal locked away in a trunk. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that the presence she had encountered in the mansion had followed her. Nights became restless, filled with dreams of the Wraithmoor family and the melody that refused to leave her memory. As weeks turned into months, Evelyn's health began to decline. The once vibrant historian became a shadow of herself, consumed by the weight of the knowledge she had unearthed. The townsfolk noticed her absence and whispered of her ill-fated visit to Wraithmoor Manor. None dared to check on her, fearing the curse that seemed to plague those who sought the mansion's secrets. One stormy night, the light in Evelyn's room went out for the last time. When the innkeeper entered the next morning, they found the room empty, the trunk open, and the journal gone. On the desk lay a single sheet of paper with a message scrawled in Evelyn's handwriting. The truth is theirs now. Beware the melody. The town of Blackwater continued to exist under its veil of mist, the story of Wraithmoor Manor fading into legend once more. But on quiet nights, when the wind carried the faint strains of an unfamiliar tune, the townsfolk would shudder and pull their curtains tight, knowing that some mysteries are never truly laid to rest.